I worked 3 jobs to raise my daughter alone, and she thanked her stepfather in her graduation speech. I smiled and clapped, but I was already planning her lesson. My name is Daniel Garrett and I'm 58 years old. For the past 26 years I've been everything to my daughter Sophia. Father, mother, provider, protector, and biggest supporter. Single parenthood wasn't a choice I made. It was a choice Sophia's mother made when she walked out on us when Sophia was 2 years old. But I'd do it all again. At least, I thought I would until last Saturday. Sophia's MBA graduation from Northwestern should have been the proudest moment of my life. Instead, it became the moment I realized my daughter had completely erased me from her narrative. When she gave her speech as valedictorian, she thanked the man who shaped my values and showed me what real success looks like. Her stepfather Richard, who'd been in her life for exactly 6 years. 6 years versus 24. Apparently, timing matters less than bank account size. Let me take you back to the beginning because the ending makes a lot more sense when you understand what came before. When Sophia's mother Lisa left us, I was a 28-year-old electrician trying to figure out how to be both parents to a toddler who kept asking when mommy was coming home. Lisa had decided motherhood wasn't fulfilling her potential, and moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting. She sent birthday cards for the first 3 years, then nothing. I could have been bitter. Instead, I got busy. I worked my regular job at Morrison Electric during the day, took weekend contracting jobs, and started doing emergency calls at night. 3 income streams, barely 4 hours of sleep, but Sophia had everything she needed. Dance lessons, soccer cleats, tutoring when she struggled with math. I learned to braid hair from YouTube videos and attended every single parent-teacher conference. When Sophia was 8, I started my own electrical contracting business. Garrett Electric Solutions began in my garage and grew into one of Colorado's most successful commercial electrical companies. By the time Sophia was 15, we employed 42 people and held contracts with major construction firms throughout the region. Sophia saw none of this. To her, I was just dad, the guy who picked her up from school, helped with homework, and somehow always had money for whatever she needed. She never questioned where it came from. Kids don't think about overhead costs and profit margins. They just assume food appears and college funds grow themselves. I set up Sophia's trust fund when she turned 16. $2.8 million, invested conservatively to fund her education and give her a strong financial foundation for adult life. My lawyer, Lisa Hendricks, had suggested including certain conditions: respect clauses, family loyalty requirements, behavioral expectations. Daniel, she'd said, money changes people. Sometimes it's good to have safeguards. I'd laughed it off. Sophia was my daughter. Why would I need legal protection from my own child? Lisa just smiled and included the clauses anyway. Said it was standard practice for large family trusts. I signed without reading the fine print. Another mistake I'd lived to regret. Everything changed when Sophia turned 18 and Lisa decided to re-enter the picture. Not as a mother trying to reconnect with her daughter. As a successful real estate agent in Denver who'd married Richard Blackwood, a commercial property developer worth about $12 million. Lisa hadn't come back for Sophia. She'd come back for social status and a ready-made family narrative. Sophia was instantly fascinated by this glamorous woman who claimed to be her mother. Lisa lived in Cherry Creek, drove a Mercedes, wore designer clothes, and had connections throughout Denver's social elite. She represented everything Sophia thought she wanted: sophistication, wealth, and acceptance in circles that mattered. Richard was the perfect complement. Smooth, charming, successful, and eager to play stepfather to an intelligent, accomplished teenage daughter he could show off at charity events. He treated Sophia like a trophy stepdaughter, buying her expensive gifts and talking about her achievements as if he'd personally orchestrated them. I watched it happen gradually. Sophia's weekend visits to Lisa and Richard's house became more frequent. Her conversation shifted to include phrases like "Richard says," and "Lisa thinks I should." She started asking why I lived in a modest 3-bedroom house when Richard had a mansion with a pool. The summer before Sophia's senior year, Richard offered to pay for her college education. Full tuition, room and board, spending money whatever she needed. "Consider it an investment in family," he'd said with that practiced smile that never reached his eyes. Sophia was thrilled. Finally, someone who could provide the lifestyle she deserved. The fact that I'd already saved enough to pay for her education without sacrificing anyone's financial security was irrelevant. Richard's money came with social connections and prestige. Mine just came with memories of struggle. I should have said something then. Should have explained that Sophia's college fund already existed, that her trust was worth more than Richard's annual income, that I'd been planning her financial future since before she could walk. But I didn't want to make it about money. I wanted Sophia to choose me because she loved me, not because I could outbid her stepfather. Another mistake. Sophia graduated high school as valedictorian and headed to Northwestern to pursue her MBA. Richard and Lisa hosted a graduation party at their house, inviting everyone who mattered in Denver's business community. Sophia gave a speech thanking them for believing in her potential and providing the support and guidance that made this achievement possible. I'd been sitting in the back watching my daughter credit her success to people who'd known her for less than 2 years. When she hugged Richard and called him the father I always needed, I felt something cold settle in my chest. The Northwestern years were worse. Sophia spent breaks at Richard's house, attended charity galas as his stepdaughter, and started describing herself in social media posts as Richard Blackwood's daughter. My name appeared nowhere in her narrative. I'd become a footnote in my own daughter's story. I continued supporting her financially, of course. Sophia's trust fund covered her tuition and expenses, but she never asked where the money came from. Richard had told everyone he was paying for her education, and Sophia never corrected the assumption. Why would she? It made for a better story. The MBA program at Northwestern was exclusive, expensive, and exactly the kind of achievement that fit Sophia's new image. She excelled academically, networked with future business leaders, and prepared for a career that would match her elevated social status. She never mentioned my business degree from state, my 2 decades of successful entrepreneurship, or the fact that her trust fund had paid for every expensive opportunity she'd enjoyed. That's what made last Saturday so devastating. Sophia had been selected as the student speaker for Northwestern's MBA graduation ceremony. 500 graduates, their families, and distinguished guests gathered in the university's main auditorium to celebrate academic achievement and future potential. I'd driven up from Denver, staying in a modest hotel while Lisa and Richard had rented a penthouse suite. Sophia looked radiant on stage. Confident, polished, ready to conquer the business world with her Northwestern MBA and stepfather's connections. She spoke about overcoming challenges, pursuing excellence, and the importance of strong role models. Success isn't just about individual achievement, she said, looking directly at Richard in the audience. It's about having people in your life who believe in your potential and provide the foundation for growth. I'm grateful to the man who shaped my values and showed me what real success looks like. Richard Blackwood didn't just support my education. He taught me how to think like a leader. The applause was thunderous. Richard stood and nodded graciously, accepting credit for Sophia's transformation from small-town girl to business school graduate. Lisa dabbed her eyes with an expensive handkerchief, playing the proud mother who'd guided her daughter to this moment. I sat in the back row, clapping mechanically, watching my daughter erase 24 years of my life in favor of 6 years of Richard's checkbook. After the ceremony, I approached Sophia for congratulations. She hugged me briefly, distracted by well-wishers and networking opportunities. "Thanks for coming, Dad," she said, already looking past me toward more important conversations. "Proud of you," I replied. "Your speech was very illuminating." Sophia didn't catch the edge in my voice. She was too busy accepting compliments from Richard's business associates, who assumed she was his biological daughter. No one introduced me to anyone. I was just another face in the crowd, indistinguishable from the other proud relatives. I left the reception early and drove back to Denver in silence. 26 years of sacrifice, struggle, and unconditional love had been publicly dismissed in favor of a man who'd contributed nothing but money and social status to Sophia's development. By Monday morning, I'd made my decision. Lisa Hendricks' law office occupied the top floor of a downtown Denver high-rise, with views of the mountains and the quiet confidence that comes from decades of protecting wealthy clients' interests. Lisa had handled my business legal needs for 15 years and drawn up Sophia's trust fund documents when she turned 16. "Daniel," she said when I explained what I wanted to do, "are you absolutely certain about this?" "She made her choice," I replied. "Now I'm making mine." Lisa pulled out Sophia's trust fund documents and spread them across her mahogany desk. The papers were thick, complex, and filled with legal language I'd barely glanced at when signing them 8 years earlier. "The respect clause is right here," Lisa said, pointing to a specific paragraph. "In the event that the beneficiary publicly disavows, disrespects, or denies the grantor's role in their development, education, or success, the trust may be terminated and assets redistributed at the grantor's discretion." I stared at the words. "You really did put that in there." "Large family trusts need protection mechanisms," Lisa said. "People change when money's involved. Sometimes children forget who made their opportunities possible." Sophia's never even seen this document. Most beneficiaries don't read trust agreements until they need to. They just assume the money will always be there. Lisa leaned back in her chair. Daniel, this clause wasn't included arbitrarily. I've seen too many cases where children take their parents' financial support for granted while publicly crediting step-parents or others who contributed far less to their success. What exactly did Sophia say at the graduation? I repeated Emma's speech word for word, particularly her praise for Richard as the man who shaped her values and provided the foundation for her growth. Lisa took notes as I spoke. That's a clear violation, she said when I finished. She publicly attributed her success to someone else while ignoring your role entirely. The legal standard for disavowal is met. What are my options? We can terminate the trust immediately and redistribute the assets. The beneficiary forfeits all claims to the original funds, and you're free to establish new trusts for other recipients. Other recipients? Lisa smiled. That's up to you. Who in your life demonstrates the values you actually want to reward? I thought about that question for the rest of the week. The answer came to me while I was reviewing employee files at Garrett Electric Solutions. My operations manager, David Martinez, had been with the company for 12 years. He was hardworking, loyal, and raising 3 kids as a single father after his wife died in a car accident. His eldest daughter, Janet, was 15, bright, ambitious, and grateful for every opportunity. Janet called me Mr. Daniel, and always thanked me when I hired her for summer office work. She helped with filing, answered phones, and asked thoughtful questions about business operations. When her school's engineering club needed funding for a robotics competition, Janet had approached me directly, presenting a detailed budget and explaining exactly how the investment would benefit the team. She understood gratitude. She understood respect. She understood that opportunities come from people, not from luck. I want to establish a new trust for Janet Martinez, I told Lisa the following Monday. Same amount, same structure, but with a recipient who understands family loyalty. And Sophia? Sophia made her choice when she stood up in front of 500 people and gave Richard credit for everything I've provided. She wants Richard to be her father figure? Let Richard fund her future. Patricia nodded and began drafting the necessary documents. The process would take 2 weeks, time enough for Sophia to enjoy her post-graduation celebration before learning about the consequences of her public disavowal. I didn't feel guilty about the decision. Sophia had graduated debt-free from an expensive MBA program, lived comfortably throughout college, and enjoyed opportunities most young people could only dream about. She'd received tremendous value from the trust fund already. The remaining money would go to someone who wouldn't take it for granted. The legal papers were served on Sophia at her apartment in Chicago, where she'd moved to start her new job at a consulting firm. Richard had arranged the position through his business connections, naturally. Sophia was living in an expensive downtown apartment, expecting her trust fund to cover the costs. She called me 20 minutes after receiving the documents. "Dad, what is this?" Her voice was high and strained. "Some lawyer just handed me papers saying my trust fund has been terminated." "You should read them carefully," I said. "Everything's explained pretty clearly. This says I violated some kind of respect clause. That's insane. I respect you. Do you? Because your graduation speech suggested otherwise." Silence on the other end. Long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Dad, you're taking this the wrong way. I was just acknowledging Richard's support during my college years. You called him the man who shaped your values and provided your foundation for growth. Was that acknowledging support or was that erasing me from your story? I didn't mean to exclude you. Sophia, you didn't mention me at all. In a speech about the people who made your success possible, you gave all the credit to a man who's known you for 6 years while ignoring the man who raised you alone for 24. She started crying then. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she'd used as a teenager when she wanted something. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was nervous. I didn't think about how it sounded." "You thought about it plenty. You knew exactly what story you wanted to tell, and I wasn't part of it. Dad, please. We can work this out. I'll make a public apology. I'll tell everyone you're the one who really supported my education." Too late for that. The trust fund money, I need that for my apartment, my student loans, my future investments. Richard said he'd help with college, but he didn't pay for everything. That was interesting. So Richard hadn't actually funded Sophia's education, despite taking credit for it publicly. Sophia had been living off the trust fund I'd established while letting Richard claim financial responsibility for her success. "Should have thought about that before you decided to erase me from your narrative," I said. "Dad, you're being vindictive." This is exactly why. Sophia caught herself but not quickly enough. Exactly why what? Nothing. I didn't mean anything. No, finish the sentence. This is exactly why what? Sophia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small and defeated. This is exactly why Richard said you'd react badly if I didn't give you enough credit. He said you were insecure about money and would probably get jealous if I acknowledged his contributions. The truth finally emerged. Richard had deliberately orchestrated Sophia's speech to minimize my role and maximize his own. He'd anticipated my reaction and prepositioned himself as the reasonable adult dealing with my insecurity. So this was Richard's idea? He helped me with the speech. Said it would be more impactful if I focused on one mentor instead of trying to thank everyone. And you chose him. Dad, he's been so supportive. The networking opportunities, the career guidance, the connections that got me this job. Sophia, where do you think your college money came from? Richard paid for nothing. Your trust fund covered every penny of your Northwestern education. Richard just took credit for my money. Silence again. Longer this time. That's not true, Sophia said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Call Northwestern's financial office. Ask them who's been paying your tuition for the past 4 years. Ask them whose bank account the money came from. Dad, even if that's true, Richard still provided other support. Richard provided social status and business connections. I provided everything else. For 26 years. Sophia started crying harder. Please don't take away the trust fund. I'll pay you back for college. I'll make this right. The money's already gone, Sophia. It's been transferred to someone who understands the value of family loyalty. To who? Janet Martinez. David's daughter from my company. She's 15, grateful for every opportunity, and smart enough to appreciate where those opportunities come from. You're giving my inheritance to some random kid? I'm giving it to a young woman who demonstrates the values I want to reward. Gratitude, respect, and genuine appreciation for the people who support her success. Sophia's crying turned to anger. This is insane. You can't just steal my money and give it to some stranger. It was never your money, Sophia. It was my money, set aside for a daughter who respected her father's sacrifices. You chose Richard over me. Now someone else's daughter gets to benefit from what I've built. Dad, I love you. You know I do. Love isn't just words, Sophia. It's actions. And your actions told me everything I needed to know about where I stand in your life. I hung up before she could respond. The phone rang again immediately, then several more times. I turned it off and went to my workshop to build a bookshelf. Sometimes you need to work with your hands to clear your head. That evening, David Martinez called my landline. Daniel, I just got the strangest call from a lawyer. She said you're setting up a trust fund for Janet. $2.8 million, I said. For her education and future. Figured it was better invested in someone who actually appreciates family loyalty. Daniel. His voice was careful, respectful. What happened? I told him about Sophia's graduation speech, about the years of being pushed aside in favor of Richard, about the legal documents that had protected me from my own daughter's ingratitude. I'm sorry, David said when I finished. That must have been devastating. It was. But sometimes disappointment leads to clarity. Are you sure about this? It's a lot of money and she's still your daughter. Being someone's father doesn't mean accepting being treated like an inconvenience. Janet understands respect. She understands gratitude. She'll make better use of that money than Sophia ever would. David was quiet for a moment. Janet's going to be overwhelmed. She's talked about college, but we never thought. I mean, this changes everything for her. Good. That's what money should do. Create opportunities for people who'll appreciate them. After we hung up, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe, or just the absence of disappointment. Either way, it felt like progress. 3 days later, I learned just how deep Sophia's betrayal ran. Lisa called me Wednesday morning with an update that made my blood run cold. Daniel, you need to see something. Sophia's hired a lawyer to challenge your mental competency. What? She's filed a petition claiming you're experiencing cognitive decline and made the trust fund decision under duress. She's arguing that transferring such a large sum to a non-family member proves you're not thinking rationally. I felt my jaw clench. What evidence does she have? Her lawyer's claiming you've been acting erratically, making poor business decisions and showing signs of early dementia. They're requesting a court-ordered psychological evaluation. That's completely false. I know that. But it's a standard strategy when someone wants to reverse financial decisions they don't like. If they can get you declared incompetent, They can challenge any recent changes to trusts or wills. What are my options? We fight it aggressively. I'll need medical records, business documentation, witness statements, anything that proves you're mentally sharp and made this decision based on sound reasoning. How long will this take? Months potentially. And it'll be public record. Sophia's essentially accusing you of senility to get her money back. I hung up and sat in my office for a long time, processing what my daughter had done. Not content with publicly erasing me from her success story, she was now trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. The woman I'd raised alone for 24 years was attempting to destroy my reputation and autonomy because I'd held her accountable for her choices. That afternoon, I called an emergency meeting with my business partners, my medical team, and my financial advisors. If Emma wanted to question my mental competency, I'd provide overwhelming evidence of my continued sharpness. Dr. Elizabeth Cole, my physician for 15 years, conducted a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. The results showed normal mental function for a man my age, with no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. My business attorney provided documentation of recent successful contract negotiations, strategic planning decisions, and financial management that demonstrated clear thinking and sound judgment. 3 of my longest-serving employees gave sworn statements about my continued leadership abilities and rational decision-making processes. Lisa compiled everything into a response that painted Sophia's challenge as exactly what it was: a vindictive attempt to overturn consequences she didn't like. The court hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, Sophia launched a social media campaign designed to generate sympathy for her situation. She posted about elderly parents making irrational decisions and protecting family assets from outside manipulation. She painted herself as a concerned daughter trying to save her father from his own poor judgment. The comments from her friends and Richard's social circle were predictably supportive. Poor Emma, dealing with her father's obvious mental decline. What Sophia didn't know was that Janet Martinez was in the same online communities, screenshot everything, and forwarded it all to Lisa's office. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Sophia's lawyer presented her case for my alleged incompetency, citing the trust fund transfer as evidence of irrational decision-making. He argued that no mentally sound parent would disinherit their child in favor of a non-relative. Lisa's response was devastating. She presented medical evidence of my mental sharpness, business documentation proving my continued competency, and witness testimony about my rational decision-making process. Then she introduced Emma's social media posts as evidence of her true motivations. "Your Honor," Lisa said, "this isn't about protecting an elderly man from poor decisions. This is about a daughter who publicly disrespected her father and now faces financial consequences for her choices." Ms. Garrett's social media posts make it clear that she views this as a strategy to reclaim money she believes she's entitled to, not as genuine concern for her father's well-being. The judge's ruling was swift and definitive. Sophia's challenge was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't file it again. The trust fund transfer to Janet Martinez was upheld as the decision of a competent adult managing his own assets. Sophia's lawyer fees had cost her $15,000. Her public campaign had damaged her reputation among anyone who understood the real facts. And most importantly, she'd lost any remaining claim to moral authority in our relationship. The aftermath was swift and comprehensive. Sophia's consulting firm, which valued discretion and professional judgment, asked her to resign after clients expressed concerns about the public family dispute. Her expensive Chicago apartment became unaffordable without the trust fund income she'd expected. Richard and Lisa, suddenly responsible for supporting Sophia financially, began reconsidering their commitment to their stepdaughter's lifestyle. Sophia moved back to Denver and took a junior position at a smaller firm for half her previous salary. She rented a modest apartment and learned to live within actual means rather than anticipated inheritance. Janet Martinez, meanwhile, was thriving. The trust fund had been structured to support her education and future opportunities, but with built-in protections to ensure responsible use. She was working part-time at Garrett Electric Solutions, learning about business operations, and preparing for college with the confidence that comes from knowing her future is secure. "Mr. Daniel," she said during one of our conversations, "I want you to know I'll never take this for granted. This opportunity, it changes everything for my family." "That's exactly what money should do," I replied. "Create opportunities for people who understand their value." 6 months after the court hearing, Sophia tried to reconcile. She showed up at my office on a Tuesday afternoon, looking tired and humbled by the reality of supporting herself without family money. "Dad, I've learned my lesson. I understand now how wrong I was. Do you? I lost my job, my apartment, my financial security. I'm struggling to pay rent. I realize now how much I took for granted. Sophia, you're not sorry about what you did. You're sorry about the consequences of what you did. There's a difference. I'm sorry. About the speech, about the legal challenge, about everything. I chose Richard over you, and it was the worst mistake of my life. I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised alone, sacrificed for, and loved unconditionally for 26 years, and felt nothing but sadness for what she'd become. It's too late, I said quietly. You showed me who you really are when you thought it didn't matter. Now it's my turn to show you who I really am. Dad, please. I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for something? Being my daughter counted for everything, Sophia. Until you decided it counted for nothing. Sophia started crying, but I didn't feel moved by her tears anymore. I'd learned to distinguish between genuine remorse and strategic manipulation. The money's gone, I said. Janet's trust fund is irrevocable. You made your choice and I made mine. What about our relationship? Can't we start over? What relationship? You replaced me with Richard years ago. I'm just finally accepting the reality you created. Sophia left my office that day and I haven't seen her since. A year later, I attended Janet's 16th birthday party at David's house. She'd earned straight A's, been accepted into her school's advanced engineering program, and was already making plans for college. The trust fund had given her confidence about her future, but she hadn't lost her appreciation for present opportunities. Mr. Daniel, she said during the party, thank you for believing in me. I promise I'll make you proud. You already have, sweetheart. I watched Janet blow out her candles, surrounded by family and friends who genuinely cared about her happiness. David was there, of course, along with his younger children and extended family. They'd welcomed me into their celebration not because I'd provided money, but because I'd shown faith in Janet's potential. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Mutual respect, genuine appreciation, and love based on choice rather than obligation. Sophia had taught me that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, but Janet was teaching me that loyalty doesn't require blood. Sometimes the people who choose to value you are worth more than the ones who are supposed to. The consequences for Sophia were lasting and severe. Her reputation in Denver's business community never recovered from the public family dispute. Potential employers saw her as someone who'd challenge authority when things didn't go her way. Her relationship with Richard and Lisa became strained once they realized she'd come with financial obligations rather than assets. She eventually moved to Phoenix, taking a mid-level position at a company that didn't know about her family drama. She lived quietly, far from the social circles she'd once aspired to join, learning that actions have consequences that extend far beyond the moment they're committed. Richard's business also suffered. Several clients questioned his judgment in family matters, wondering if someone who'd manipulate a stepchild's relationship with her father could be trusted in professional settings. The public nature of the trust fund dispute made him look opportunistic and calculating. Lisa lost several real estate clients who felt uncomfortable working with someone involved in such a bitter family conflict. Her carefully constructed image as a successful professional woman was tainted by association with Sophia's vindictive legal challenge. In the end, the people who'd encouraged Sophia to prioritize status over family loyalty abandoned her when she became a liability to their own reputations. I learned something valuable from the entire experience. The strongest relationships aren't built on blood or obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. Sophia had shown me that family titles mean nothing without family values. Janet had shown me that family values can exist without family titles. Some legacies are about blood. Others are about values. I chose to invest in values and I've never regretted that decision. Have you ever been replaced or forgotten by family members who chose status over loyalty? How did you handle being publicly dismissed by someone you'd sacrificed everything for? And what's the most important lesson you've learned about the difference between family by blood and family by choice? Do you think Daniel should have given Sophia another chance, or was his decision to redirect the trust fund the right response to her betrayal? Let me know what you would have done if your own child erased you from their success story. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story of justice served cold. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful lesson you can teach someone is that respect must be earned, not assumed.